No. The word slipped from Sophia Hart's lips like steel wrapped in silk, slicing through the ballroom's golden haze. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above her, violins swelled, champagne glasses clinked, but none of it softened the blow of her refusal. Adrian Steele, billionaire, philanthropist, and the man everyone in the room wanted to impress, stood frozen. He had extended his hand, his infamous smirk in place, fully expecting her to say yes, just as countless women before had. Instead, Sophia had folded her arms across her chest, meeting his gaze with calm defiance. "I don't dance with strangers," she said evenly, though her heart hammered against her ribcage. A ripple went through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers hissed like restless snakes. No one, not even senators or celebrities, told Adrian Steele no. Yet here was a woman in a simple black dress, elegant but unadorned, refusing him as if he were nothing more than an ordinary man. For a long beat, Adrian didn't move. His jaw clenched, his piercing gray eyes narrowing. To him, rejection was foreign, unthinkable. But instead of retreating, his interest only sharpened. "Then I'll have to become more than a stranger," he murmured, the edge of a challenge curling his lips. Sophia turned away, dismissing him without a second glance. That, more than her words, cut deeper than he cared to admit. The night had begun innocently enough. Sophia wasn't supposed to be here at all. She hated galas, hated the pretense, the shallow laughter, the parade of gowns and tuxedos. But her best friend, Yvette, the assistant director of the Literacy Foundation, had begged her to attend. "It's one night," Yvette had pleaded. "You're always at that school, always buried in lesson plans. Come out, meet people, maybe even network for your students. Who knows? Someone here might actually donate to your classroom." So Sophia had agreed. She'd chosen her simplest black dress, pulled her hair into a neat bun, and told herself she'd slip out before dessert. She wasn't here for men or money, she was here because she believed in books, in learning, in the children whose faces she saw every morning. And then he had walked in. Adrian Steele carried himself like a storm contained in a man's frame, sharp suit, cold eyes, an aura that made people part like water before him. Sophia had recognized him immediately. Everyone knew the name. Billionaire investor. Real estate mogul. A man who had turned small companies into empires before he was 35. But none of that impressed her. Wealth didn't move her. Not after watching her own father work 3 jobs to keep food on the table, only for her mother's health bills to swallow what little he earned. Money was a fickle thing. What mattered, what always mattered, was character. So when Adrian Steele stopped in front of her, hand outstretched as if the world itself would crumble if she denied him, Sophia had done what came naturally. She had said no. Now, as the gala carried on, she slipped outside for air, grateful to be away from the suffocating weight of chandeliers and champagne. The night was cool, scented faintly with roses from the hotel's garden. She leaned against the railing, letting her shoulders relax. She should have known he would follow. "I have to admit," Adrian's voice came from behind her, smooth and steady, "I didn't expect that." Sophia closed her eyes briefly, exhaling. "Most men don't." He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the stone. "You know who I am?" She turned to face him, her gaze steady. "I know enough." "And still you said no," he was perplexed. "Especially because I know enough." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Adrian studied her face, searching for a crack in her composure. But she met him head-on, refusing to look away. Most people fawned over him. They leaned closer, laughed too loudly, agreed too easily. Sophia's refusal wasn't just refreshing, it was infuriating. He wasn't used to working for anyone's attention. "What would it take to get a yes from you?" he asked finally. Sophia tilted her head, her lips curving in a wry smile. "Something money can't buy." And with that, she walked past him, back into the glow of the ballroom, leaving him rooted to the stone floor, the taste of her words lingering like a dare. Adrian Steele had never chased anyone in his life. Women chased him. Investors begged for his time. Politicians sought his approval. But as he watched Sophia disappear through the gilded doors, one truth sank into his chest with the weight of inevitability. For the first time, he wanted someone who couldn't be bought. And he would chase her, harder than he'd chased anything before. The next morning, Sophia stood at the front of her classroom, the lingering echoes of the gala already pushed to the back of her mind. Her day began the same way it always did, the buzz of 27 children settling into their seats, the scrape of pencils, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. She moved through the rows with quiet authority, offering encouragement here, a gentle correction there. For Sophia, this was the real world. Not glittering chandeliers and billionaire stairs, but the uneven scrawl of a child struggling to spell tomorrow. "Sound it out," she reminded little Jaden, kneeling beside his desk. "Break it into pieces, tomorrow. You've got this." His grin when he got it right made her chest ache in the best way. This was why she taught. This was what mattered. So when the classroom door opened and Adrian Steele himself appeared, framed in a crisp suit that looked laughably out of place among the chipped desks and posters peeling at the edges, Sophia nearly dropped the stack of spelling quizzes in her hand. Her students gasped in unison. To them, it was like a movie star had walked in. "Ms. Hart," Adrian said smoothly, as though this were the most natural place for him to be. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "You are," Sophia replied without hesitation, straightening her shoulders. "Class, eyes back on your papers." But the children were hopelessly distracted. Whispers hissed through the room. "Who's that? Is he famous? He looks rich." Adrian's gaze swept the room, his expression softening for the briefest moment as he took in the small faces, the cracked whiteboard, the shelves of battered books. "I was in the neighborhood," he said casually, "and thought I'd see if your students might benefit from a donation." Sophia crossed her arms. "My students need consistency, not distractions." That earned a ripple of giggles from the children. They had never seen their teacher talk to a man like this, especially one who looked like he owned half the city. Adrian's lips curved in that infuriating half-smile. "You don't make things easy, do you?" "I make them fair," Sophia shot back. "And right now, fair means giving my kids the attention they deserve." There was a pause, a silent tug-of-war between them. Then Adrian inclined his head slightly, as though conceding a temporary victory. "I'll come back after school," he said smoothly. And just like that he turned and left, leaving behind a trail of whispers and wide eyes. By the time the dismissal bell rang, Sophia had convinced herself he wouldn't actually return. Men like him didn't wait. They didn't linger in public school hallways that smelled faintly of crayons and bleach. But when she walked out into the crisp afternoon air, there he was, leaning against a sleek black car, as polished and poised as if he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. "You're persistent," she muttered, pulling her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "I'm curious," he corrected, pushing off the car. "I've had board members, senators, CEOs throw themselves into my orbit. Last night you barely blinked. Today you dismissed me in front of a room full of children. I have to know why." Sophia stopped a few feet away, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Because you're used to people wanting something from you. Money, power, a headline. I don't want any of that." His brows rose. "Then what do you want?" She gave him a long look. "For my students to grow up believing they matter, even if the world tells them otherwise." Her words hit harder than he expected. For a moment, Adrian didn't have a clever retort. He watched her, this woman with fire in her voice and exhaustion in her eyes, who somehow looked more powerful standing in a worn-out cardigan than most people did in designer gowns. "I could help with that," he said at last, softer now. "Not with speeches. With resources. Books, computers, better facilities. Things they deserve." Sophia hesitated. She could hear the sincerity buried under the arrogance, but she wasn't ready to trust it. "Not yet. If you really want to help," she said finally, "don't do it for me. Don't do it for recognition. Do it because you believe they're worth it." Then she walked past him, her bag slung over her shoulder, leaving him standing there by his car. For the second time in less than 24 hours, Adrian Steele had been dismissed. And instead of discouraging him, the rejection only sharpened his determination. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his charm. She wanted something real, something he wasn't sure he knew how to give. But for the first time in years, Adrian felt the thrill of a challenge. And Sophia Hart had just become the only prize he couldn't buy. Adrian Steele was not a man who chased. He was pursued. Investors fought for meetings with him. Politicians angled for his endorsements. Women tripped over themselves for the chance to sit across from him at dinner. The world bent always in his direction. But Sophia Hart had not bent. She hadn't even wavered. And that simple act of defiance had wormed its way into his thoughts like an itch he couldn't ignore. 3 days after his visit to her classroom, he found himself parked in front of her school again. His driver gave him a wary look in the rearview mirror. "Sir, are you sure?" "I'm sure," Adrian cut him off, straightening his tie. He didn't know what he was going to say, only that doing nothing was no longer an option. When Sophia stepped out of the building, she was balancing a stack of papers, her tote bag slung heavily over her shoulder. She looked tired, her brow furrowed in concentration. But even then, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made him forget whatever carefully rehearsed line he had planned. She spotted him instantly, her lips pressing into a firm line. "Again?" "Yes," Adrian said simply. "Mr. Steele, I told you." "Adrian," he corrected smoothly. Her eyes narrowed. "Fine, Adrian. You don't need to keep showing up here." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I want to understand you. No one's ever—" He stopped himself, realizing how arrogant that sounded. "No one's ever said no the way you did. You didn't even hesitate." "That's because I meant it," Sophia replied. "You think you can wear me down by showing up. You can't." Instead of being discouraged, he smiled. "We'll see." His persistence took many forms. On Tuesday, she found new books delivered to her classroom, anonymously, but the expensive binding gave him away. She marched them straight to the principal's office and demanded they be donated to the school library, refusing to let him buy his way into her good graces. On Wednesday, he appeared at the neighborhood coffee shop where she graded papers. He didn't try to sit with her, only ordered his drink and lingered a few tables away. But she felt his gaze, steady and unrelenting, until she finally snapped, "Do you have nothing better to do?" "Nothing as interesting as this," he'd replied, infuriatingly calm. On Friday, he attended the school board meeting where Sophia spoke passionately about underfunded classrooms. He sat in the back, silent, his expression unreadable. When it was over, he approached her in the hallway. "You're brilliant when you're angry," he told her. She spun on her heel and walked away without answering. Each attempt only deepened Adrian's fascination. He was beginning to realize that Sophia's refusal wasn't a game or a strategy, it was who she was. She truly didn't care about his money, his name, or the glittering world he represented. She was stubbornly, almost maddeningly genuine. And he couldn't stay away. One evening, Sophia arrived home to find him sitting on the steps of her small apartment building. The sight stopped her cold. He looked entirely out of place against the cracked brick and flickering streetlight, his tailored suit too sharp for the worn-down block. "This is stalking," she said flatly, adjusting her bag. "This is persistence," Adrian countered. "I wanted to see where you live." "Why?" she asked. "Because it tells me more about you than a gala ever could." She shook her head, exasperated. "You don't give up, do you?" "No," his answer was firm, immediate. "Not when I want something." Her chest tightened despite herself. There was something disarming in his honesty, even if it was wrapped in arrogance. Still, she couldn't let him think he was winning ground. "Then let me make it clear," Sophia said, stepping past him toward the door. "I'm not interested in being your next project. Or your next distraction." He rose to his feet, his expression serious now. "You're not a project. And you're not a distraction." She paused at the doorway, torn between shutting him out completely and letting him speak. In the end, she said nothing, only disappeared inside. But later, as she graded essays at her kitchen table, she caught herself thinking about the look in his eyes. Intense, unyielding, but strangely vulnerable. Adrian Steele had the world at his feet. And yet, for reasons she couldn't fully understand, he was standing on her doorstep. And Sophia had the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning. Adrian Steele had walked through skyscrapers bearing his name, boardrooms filled with men twice his age, and hotels where the marble floors gleamed like mirrors. He thought he'd seen it all. But nothing prepared him for the sight of Sophia Hart commanding her classroom. He arrived unannounced, though this time with permission from the principal. A discreet phone call and a sizable donation had secured him a visitor's pass, though Sophia would later make it clear the money wouldn't sway her. For now, he stood quietly in the doorway, watching her move among her students with a grace and authority that made his chest tighten unexpectedly. "Remember, every word has power," Sophia was saying, her voice animated as she paced at the front of the room. "When you choose your words, you're choosing the kind of impact you want to have. So," she tapped the whiteboard with her marker, "who can give me a stronger word than big?" Dozens of small hands shot up. "Enormous," one boy shouted. "Gigantic," another added. Sophia beamed, her smile radiant. "Exactly. Bigger words carry bigger meaning." Her students laughed, their energy filling the room like sunlight. Adrian found himself smiling too, though he quickly schooled his expression. He wasn't supposed to be moved by this. He was here to observe, maybe to impress her. And yet, the more he watched, the more he realized Sophia didn't need anything from him. She already had influence, already commanded respect. Without wealth, without status, without his name attached. Finally she noticed him. Her eyes narrowed instantly. "Class, keep working on your word list. I'll be right back." She marched toward the door, every step deliberate. "What are you doing here?" she hissed under her breath. "Visiting," Adrian replied smoothly, lowering his voice. "The principal said it was fine." Her jaw clenched. "Of course he did. Probably after you waved your checkbook around." "Not just that," he said quietly, holding her gaze. "I wanted to see you here. With them." Something flickered in her eyes, but she shook her head. "This isn't your playground, Mr. Steele. These kids don't need a billionaire watching them like some experiment." "They're not the experiment," Adrian said, surprising himself with the honesty in his voice. "You are." Her lips parted in disbelief. "Excuse me?" "I mean," he clarified, softening, "I wanted to understand you. Last night at the gala, today in this classroom, you're different. You don't bend. You don't care who I am." "That's because who you are doesn't matter here," Sophia said firmly. "In this room, I'm the authority. These kids are the priority. You want to be part of that? Then sit down, be quiet, and don't get in the way." For the first time in years, someone had given Adrian Steele an order he couldn't ignore. And against all logic, he obeyed. He took a seat at the back, folding his tall frame into a desk clearly built for smaller bodies. A few of the kids turned to stare at him, whispering behind their hands. Adrian raised a brow, and they quickly snapped their eyes back to Sophia. She resumed teaching, pretending he wasn't there. But Adrian couldn't stop watching her. The way she crouched beside a shy student, encouraging him until he finally spoke aloud. The way her eyes lit up when someone used a new word correctly. The patience, the discipline, the joy, all of it was magnetic in a way that boardrooms and cocktail parties could never replicate. By the time the lesson ended, Adrian wasn't sure who had been more captivated, the children or himself. When the final bell rang and the students spilled out of the room, Sophia turned on him immediately. "Whatever this is, this obsession of yours, it has to stop," she said, gathering papers from her desk. "Obsession?" He allowed a half smile. "That's a strong word. It fits." He studied her for a long moment. "I've built empires, Ms. Hart. I've closed deals people said were impossible. But standing in this classroom," he trailed off, almost unwilling to admit the thought, "I think I've finally found something I can't buy." Sophia froze, the papers in her hands forgotten. For just a moment, his words cracked her armor. But then she shook her head. "You say that now. But give it time and you'll get bored. That's what men like you do." Adrian leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "Then maybe I'm not the man you think I am." And before she could respond, he walked out, leaving her staring after him, unsettled by the possibility that he might be telling the truth. The ballroom glittered with wealth. Diamond necklaces sparkled beneath chandeliers, laughter spilled over the sound of a jazz quartet, and servers floated through the crowd with trays of champagne balanced on silver. It was Adrian Steele's domain, the kind of place where his presence alone commanded attention. Yet as he stood at the center of it all, his gaze searched for only one person. And there she was. Sophia Hart, in a simple navy dress that brushed her knees, her hair pinned back with understated elegance. She didn't glow with jewels or command the room with money, but somehow she stole the air the moment she walked in. Heads turned, not because of extravagance, but because she radiated something the others couldn't: authenticity. Adrian's lips curved in satisfaction. She had come. Of course it hadn't been easy. She had declined his invitation more than once, insisting she had no interest in his circles. But when Yvette, her best friend, revealed that the evening's proceeds were supposed to fund educational programs, Sophia had reluctantly agreed. She was here for her students, not for him. Adrian crossed the room quickly, ignoring the well-wishers trying to catch his attention. "You look extraordinary," he murmured when he reached her. I'm here for the kids, Sophia reminded him, her eyes narrowing just enough to cut through the charm in his tone. And I'm glad you are, he replied smoothly, offering his arm. Come. Let me introduce you to a few people who could help your cause. Against her better judgment, she allowed him to lead her through the sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. He introduced her to CEOs, politicians, philanthropists, each one eager to shake her hand once Adrian Steele vouched for her. But Sophia quickly realized what was happening. He wasn't just networking for her sake. He was putting her on display. At dinner, the auctioneer took the stage, announcing prizes with figures that made Sophia's head spin. Thousands bid on vacations, yachts, art pieces. It was spectacle, not charity. And though the audience cheered as millions were pledged, Sophia's jaw tightened. How many of those children in her classroom would ever see a fraction of this wealth? Finally, Adrian raised his paddle. $1 million, he announced, his voice calm, deliberate. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause. Sophia's chest burned. She knew what he was doing. He wasn't just giving, he was performing. And every camera in the room caught it. When the applause died down, Sophia leaned closer, her voice sharp enough for him to hear but soft enough to sound private. Do you ever give without needing the world to see you do it? His brow arched. It isn't about me. It's about impact. $1 million will look good on tomorrow's headlines, she cut in. Don't pretend otherwise. For the first time that evening, his composure faltered. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. You're welcome to be cynical. But that money will still buy books, computers, meals, things your students need. Sophia pushed back her chair and stood. Her sudden movement drew attention. Eyes turned toward her as she spoke, her voice steady, clear. Charity isn't about flashing checks in ballrooms, she said. It's about commitment. About showing up where no one's watching. About giving without expecting applause. The room fell into stunned silence. Only the faint clinking of glasses broke the tension. Sophia didn't flinch under the stares. She was used to standing before classrooms, holding the weight of expectation. This was no different. Adrian rose slowly, his height commanding the stage even without a microphone. And yet, he said evenly, without that million children would still be waiting. Talk is noble. But action feeds mouths. The crowd murmured, divided between admiration for his pragmatism and curiosity about this fearless woman who dared to challenge him. Sophia shook her head. Action isn't measured in dollar signs. It's measured in presence, in sacrifice, in the willingness to keep showing up. That's something you can't buy. For a long moment, the two of them stood locked in silent battle, the entire room holding its breath. Then, slowly, Sophia gathered her clutch and turned away. I won't be your stage, she whispered as she brushed past him. Adrian stood rooted, the applause resuming faintly as the auctioneer filled the silence. But her words hit deeper than any rejection before. She wasn't just unimpressed, she was unmoved. And yet, as he watched her disappear into the crowd, his determination only solidified. He had built an empire on the belief that everything had a price. But Sophia Hart had just reminded him there were some things money couldn't buy, and that made her worth more than any empire he owned. The sound of shattering glass jolted Sophia out of her lesson. She spun toward the back of the classroom, where a rock lay amid shards of broken window pane. Her students gasped, some ducking instinctively under their desks. Sophia's heart pounded as she quickly moved them away from the mess. Everyone stay calm, she said firmly, masking the tremor in her voice. Jaden, go get the janitor. Tasha, sit everyone on the carpet away from the window. The children obeyed, but their wide eyes told the story. They were frightened. This wasn't the first time vandalism had struck the school. In a struggling neighborhood, the old building had been a target before. Graffiti, broken windows, even stolen supplies. But it always shook her. Not for herself, but for her students. They deserved a safe place to learn, not one that reminded them how easily the world could disregard them. By the time the janitor arrived, news had already spread. The principal rushed in, flustered, apologizing, promising to file another police report. Sophia clenched her fists, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. Reports didn't fix windows. Reports didn't protect children. That evening, as she stayed late sweeping up stray shards, a familiar voice echoed in the doorway. I heard what happened. Sophia straightened, dustpan in hand, her stomach tightening. Who told you? I have ways of finding things out. Adrian stepped into the room, his suit immaculate against the backdrop of cracked plaster and faded posters. "Are you all right?" "We're fine," she replied curtly. "The kids are fine. It's nothing new." He frowned. "It shouldn't be nothing new. They shouldn't have to learn in a place that feels unsafe." Sophia dropped the dustpan into the trash with more force than necessary. "And yet they do. Every day." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Adrian moved closer, scanning the damaged window. His jaw tightened. "I'll fix this." Sophia turned sharply. "No. Don't you dare write a check for a quick patch-up and expect me to thank you." His eyes narrowed. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" she shot back. "Because so far that's all I've seen you do. Flash money. Make gestures. It's easy when you have billions, it costs you nothing." Something raw flickered across his face, a crack in his polished mask. He lowered his voice. "You think everything comes easy for me?" Sophia blinked, caught off guard by the edge in his tone. "You see the headlines, the suits, the cars," Adrian continued, his gaze fixed on the broken window. "But you don't know what it took to get here. You don't know what I've lost along the way." There was something in his voice, gravelly, unguarded, that unsettled her. For the first time, she glimpsed not the billionaire tycoon, but the man beneath, carrying ghosts she hadn't considered. "Then show me," she said quietly. "Not with money. Not with promises. Show me you can care without needing control." His eyes met hers, steady, searching. And for once he didn't argue. The next morning, Adrian returned, not with contractors or checks but with his sleeves rolled up. Sophia nearly dropped her coffee when she saw him carrying lumber alongside a group of volunteers. "What on earth?" she began. "Community rebuild project," he said simply. "I made a few calls. Gathered some hands. No press, no headlines. Just work." 4 hours, Sophia watched in disbelief as Adrian Steele, who probably hadn't held a hammer in years, sweated alongside janitors, parents, and local volunteers. He pried nails, hauled wood, swept debris. His expensive shoes were ruined, his crisp shirt streaked with dust. And yet there was no complaint. No need for recognition. Just quiet determination. By the time the window was repaired and the classroom cleaned, the children peeked inside with wide-eyed awe. Not at the new glass, but at the sight of a billionaire crouched on the floor, wiping dust from his hands like any ordinary man. "Mr. Steele helped fix our window?" Jaden whispered. Sophia swallowed, her throat unexpectedly tight. "Yes," she said softly. "He did." When the last volunteer left, Sophia lingered by the doorway as Adrian gathered his jacket. He looked tired, but there was a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You proved me wrong," she admitted. He turned, brows raised. "That doesn't happen often, does it?" "Not really." Their eyes held for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. For the first time, Sophia didn't see him as an intruder in her world, but as someone who had stepped into it willingly, without needing to own it. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to Adrian Steele than the empire he carried. Sophia wasn't sure when it had happened. Somewhere between Adrian hammering crooked nails into the window frame and the way he crouched to listen earnestly to one of her students, something inside her had shifted. She had fought hard not to notice. His quiet persistence, his unguarded laugh, the sweat beading on his brow as he worked like any other man. But denial only went so far. The problem was, attraction wasn't enough. She'd spent her life guarding herself from men who thought charm could replace respect. And Adrian Steele, with his billions and effortless confidence, was the most dangerous temptation yet. So she kept her guard up, even when her heart tugged otherwise. The test came sooner than she expected. Later that week, the school hosted a small fundraiser dinner. Parents brought dishes, the staff decorated the cafeteria with paper lanterns, and students performed little skits. Sophia had been on her feet for hours, making sure things ran smoothly. Halfway through, she felt his presence before she saw him. Adrian, impossibly striking in a tailored navy suit, entered with the calm assurance of a man used to being noticed. Conversations dipped. Parents stared. Even the principal nearly tripped over himself greeting him. Sophia bristled. She hadn't invited him. "You came," she said flatly when he reached her. "I said I'd support the school," Adrian replied smoothly. "Besides, I've never been to a fundraiser where the entertainment included second graders dressed as astronauts. I couldn't resist." His smile was disarming, but Sophia crossed her arms. "This isn't your world, Adrian." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I want to understand it." Before she could respond, one of her students, Tasha, ran up and tugged at her skirt. "Miss Hart, will you come see us before we go on stage?" Sophia bent down, softening. "Of course, sweetheart." As she walked away, she felt Adrian's gaze follow her. Something about it unsettled her, not just hunger but admiration. The evening went smoothly until the auction began. Parents bid modest amounts on donated goods: a handmade quilt, a basket of books, a tutoring voucher. The school needed every penny, but the atmosphere was light, playful. Then Adrian raised his hand. $100,000, he announced for the quilt. The room went silent. Sophia's stomach dropped. The auctioneer nearly stammered. Do I hear 101? Nobody dared. The quilt sold instantly. Murmurs filled the cafeteria. Some parents clapped uncertainly. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Sophia's jaw tightened. She cornered Adrian as soon as the auction ended. "What was that?" she hissed. "I was helping," he said, clearly baffled by her tone. "You were showing off," she snapped. "This isn't one of your charity galas, Adrian. You made every parent in there feel small." His expression hardened. "So I'm supposed to sit on my hands while your school scrapes by with pocket change? Excuse me for thinking bigger." "It's not about the money," she retorted. "It's about respect. These families give what they can. You turned their generosity into a spectacle." For once, Adrian didn't have a slick comeback. He looked genuinely frustrated. "I don't understand you," he said quietly. "Most people would thank me." "I'm not most people," Sophia replied, her voice like steel. The tension lingered all night. When the fundraiser ended and the last table was folded away, Sophia found Adrian waiting outside by his car. The cool night air carried a weight between them. "You push me away every time I try," he said. His voice wasn't sharp now, but almost weary. "Why?" Sophia swallowed hard. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she liked him more than she should, that he scared her because he could break down walls she'd spent years building. But her pride wouldn't let her. "Because I won't be another box you tick off," she said instead. "I won't be bought or paraded or controlled. If you can't handle that, walk away now." He studied her, his jaw tight, eyes shadowed. Then, to her surprise, he nodded slowly. "Patience isn't my strong suit," Adrian admitted. "But for you, I'll try." The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She didn't reply, but something in her chest softened against her will. As his car pulled away, Sophia stood alone under the street lamp, her emotions in chaos. Pride told her to keep her walls high. But her heart whispered another truth, that Adrian Steele wasn't giving up anytime soon. And, against her better judgment, she wasn't sure she wanted him to. Saturday mornings were sacred to Sophia. They were her one chance in the week to breathe, grading papers with a cup of tea, listening to jazz on the radio, pretending for a few quiet hours that the world wasn't tugging at her from every direction. So when a knock rattled her front door at 9 a.m., she nearly ignored it. But the knocking persisted, steady and unrelenting, and she knew instinctively who it was. She opened the door to find Adrian Steele, dressed down in a gray sweater and dark jeans, holding a brown paper bag that smelled suspiciously like fresh pastries. "I come in peace," he said, lifting the bag slightly. Sophia arched a brow. "You know, most people call first." "Most people aren't me." His grin was infuriatingly charming. She should have closed the door. She should have sent him away. But the smell of cinnamon rolls wafted in, and against her better judgment, she stepped aside. "5 minutes," she warned. 10, he bargained, already walking in. He set the bag on her small kitchen table and looked around. The apartment was cozy, bookshelves stacked high, walls dotted with framed student artwork, a vase of fresh flowers on the windowsill. It was warm and lived in, the opposite of his sleek, curated penthouse. "You live in a place that feels like you," Adrian said softly, almost to himself. Sophia ignored the flutter that stirred in her chest. "Stop trying to analyze me." "Can't help it. You're fascinating." She rolled her eyes and reached for a pastry. "So why are you here?" "Because I owe you an apology," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "For the fundraiser. You were right. I was showing off. I didn't think about how it would affect everyone else." Sophia paused, surprised. The Adrian Steele she'd come to know didn't admit mistakes easily. "And?" she prompted. "And?" he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't want you to think I'm trying to buy you. Or your world. I want you to believe that I care." The vulnerability in his voice disarmed her more than any bouquet of roses or glittering gift could have. She studied him carefully, searching for cracks in his polished exterior. "Caring isn't about money, Adrian. It's about showing up. Listening. Learning. Can you do that?" His eyes locked on hers. "Teach me." The words lingered between them. For the first time, Sophia allowed herself to smile. "Fine. Lesson 1, you don't fix things with your wallet. Sometimes people just need you to sit with them, even if you can't solve their problems. Like you sitting with your students when they're scared," Adrian said quietly. "Exactly." She took a sip of tea. Lesson 2, patience. Not everything bends to your will just because you want it. "That one's going to be harder," he admitted, making her laugh despite herself. They talked for hours, about her students, about his business, about the childhoods that had shaped them. Adrian confessed that his drive for control came from growing up with parents who were too busy for him, always absent even when they were in the room. Sophia shared how losing her mother young had forced her to become resilient, to carry herself with strength even when she wanted to crumble. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a confession of love. But it was honest, raw in a way neither of them was used to. By the time the sun dipped low, Sophia realized she had let him stay far longer than 5 minutes. Hours had slipped by unnoticed. Adrian stood to leave, but not before pausing at her door. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For letting me in. Not just here," he gestured to her apartment, "but here." His hand hovered near his chest. Sophia's throat tightened. She wanted to brush it off, to make a joke, but the sincerity in his eyes stopped her. "Don't make me regret it," she whispered. "I won't," he promised. When the door closed behind him, Sophia leaned against it, her heart racing. She told herself to be cautious, to remember the risks. But another part of her, quieter, stubbornly hopeful, knew something had shifted. For the first time she saw Adrian Steele not as the billionaire chasing her, but as the man who was learning, slowly and clumsily, how to love. And that was a lesson she wasn't sure she could resist teaching. The storm didn't arrive with thunder. It crept into Sophia's life quietly, disguised as another bad week at school. First came the budget cuts. A letter from the district announced slashed funding, and Sophia's after-school reading program, the one she'd fought for, begged for, was suddenly on the chopping block. Then a parent complaint arrived, accusing her of playing favorites. It was baseless, but still the sting settled heavy in her chest. By Friday she felt like she was carrying the whole world on her back. And that was before her landlord's letter, rent increase. When she finally sat in her small apartment, papers scattered across her coffee table, she couldn't stop the tears. Not from weakness, but from sheer exhaustion. She had fought so hard to build a stable life for herself and her students, and it felt like everything was unraveling. A knock startled her. She quickly wiped her face, praying her eyes weren't too red. Adrian stood in the doorway, holding a bag of takeout and looking every bit the picture of calm. "I thought you might not have eaten." Her throat tightened. Of all nights, why did he have to see her like this? Vulnerable. Bare. He stepped inside, immediately catching sight of the papers. "What's going on?" "Nothing," she said quickly, but her voice betrayed her. Adrian set the bag down and crouched by the table. "Sophia." His tone was gentle but firm. "Talk to me." She exhaled slowly, the fight leaving her. "The district is cutting programs again. My reading group is gone. And my rent's going up. Her voice cracked. "I can't fix everything at once." For a moment, silence. Then Adrian reached for her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Let me help." The words ignited something sharp inside her. She pulled her hand back. "No." He blinked. "No. Adrian, this is my life. My battles. I don't need you swooping in with your billions to make them disappear." His jaw tightened, the steel in him showing. "You're struggling, Sophia. I could write a check tonight and save that program. I could buy this building if I wanted to. Why wouldn't I?" "Because that's not the point," she burst out, standing. "Do you think money solves everything? My students don't need a billionaire savior. They need stability. Consistency. They need to know someone cares enough to fight for them, not just throw cash at the problem. Her voice trembled now, but she didn't stop. And me, I need to know that you're here for more than fixing things. That you're not trying to buy your way into my life. Adrian rose slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment she feared she'd pushed too hard. But then he spoke, quieter than she expected. I don't want to buy you, Sophia. I want to stand beside you. But you have to let me in. The silence stretched. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the floor. I'm scared, Adrian. Every time I let someone in, I end up losing myself. I can't let that happen again. Something softened in his face. He stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. Then don't lose yourself. Make me earn my place. Hold me accountable. But don't shut me out. Her chest ached at the sincerity in his voice. He wasn't promising perfection, only effort. And maybe that was more valuable than any check he could write. Finally she looked up. No money. No grand gestures. If you want to help, then stand with me. Show up. Listen. He nodded once, slowly. Done. And for the first time in days, the knot in her chest loosened. Later, after they shared the takeout in comfortable silence, Sophia leaned back on the couch, watching him. He was still in his suit, tie loosened, but he looked less like a billionaire tonight and more like a man who wanted to belong. Maybe this was the turning point. Not a miracle, not a rescue. But a choice, to let someone stand with her in the storm. As he left that night, he kissed her forehead softly, a promise unspoken. Sophia stood at the window long after his car disappeared into the night, her heart steadying itself around a fragile truth. She didn't have to fight alone anymore. Spring sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the community center, painting golden squares across the polished floor. Children's laughter echoed down the hall, followed by the sound of sneakers squeaking as a game of tag unfolded. Sophia stood near the doorway, watching with quiet pride as her students flipped through brand new books in the reading corner she'd fought to save. The program hadn't vanished after all, not because of a billionaire's check, but because she and Adrian had worked side by side to rally parents, teachers, and even a few board members. The victory wasn't flashy, but it was theirs. You're smiling, Adrian said softly as he appeared at her side. He wasn't in his usual tailored suit today. Just a button-down with rolled sleeves, his tie forgotten. And still, he carried the same quiet command of every room he entered. Sophia glanced up at him. I'm allowed to smile. This is a big deal. It is, he agreed, slipping his hand into hers. The simple gesture made her heart beat faster, though she tried not to show it. She had fought to keep herself from being consumed by his world, and in the process she taught Adrian something he hadn't known he was missing: how to live without trying to buy every outcome. He hadn't written a check to save the program. He'd stood with her at late-night meetings, handed out flyers, even listened when angry parents shouted. It was messy, imperfect work, and yet he had never walked away. What are you thinking? He asked, studying her with that patient intensity that used to unnerve her but now made her feel seen. That I underestimated you, she admitted, smiling wryly. His lips curved. I've been trying to convince you of that for months. She laughed, the sound surprising her. It had been a long time since laughter came easily. At that moment, one of her students tugged on her sleeve, proudly holding up a book. Miss Hart, look. I finished it. Sophia crouched down, beaming. I knew you could. I'm proud of you. The child ran off, and Sophia rose to find Adrian watching her, something tender flickering in his expression. That right there, he said quietly, is why I chase you. Because when you look at them, it's not about what they owe you or what you can get. It's just love. I've spent my whole life chasing the wrong kind of wealth. But this, he gestured at the room filled with laughter, hope, and possibility. This is richer than anything I've ever owned. Sophia's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to remind him that life wasn't a fairy tale. But instead, she let herself lean into the truth she already knew. Then stop chasing Adrian, she whispered. Because you're already here. His hand tightened around hers, warm and steady, as though anchoring himself to that moment. For the first time in a long time, neither of them felt the need to run. And in the quiet, surrounded by books and laughter, Sophia realized they had found a different kind of rich. One built not on money but on presence, persistence, and love. If this story touches your heart, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to our channel. Let love and compassion change the world.